Hey friends, Alex Fisher here. One of the common questions I get asked in short game is what is the difference between chipping and pitching? Well, stick around. I'm going to explain what the differences are and maybe clear up some confusion you might have. Okay, so let's get to it. So what is the difference between chipping and pitching? So a chip shot is a low lofted shot that rolls on the green, and a pitch shot is more of a high lofted shot that doesn't roll quite as much. By true definition, a chip shot is going to be a putting stroke with a lofted club. So there are some similarities between putting and chipping, but our body is definitely more involved when it comes to chipping itself. So it isn't necessarily a distance thing from your target, it's more of a situational thing. I'm a big fan of being able to use your putter as much as you can when you're off the green, and typically about 3 steps off of the fringe is going to be your limit when it comes to using your putter. Between 3 steps and 6 steps, that's where I'd recommend you actually start chipping. And chipping is not done with just one club. Now there's many different ways that we can go ahead and set up to the golf ball, but for me, I want to really feel like I want to make the fewest amount of changes from my full swing setup to my short game setup. So I'm going to suggest that when you chip, you're going to have your hands all the way down at the bottom of the grip. By doing that, it's going to take the wrists out of the shot itself. It's also going to minimize the swing as well, so you'll have a little bit more control. I'm going to suggest that we have the ball lined up more towards the center of our stance and keep our feet relatively close together. Really key to do that because we want to make sure that our weight is on our front foot throughout the shot itself. So from there, really simple. If you think about your full swing for a second, when we're making a full swing, our hands and arms are going to go back to a certain point before our chest and hips start to rotate. Well, we're not going to get into that part of our swing when we're chipping. We're making a small swing. So the easiest way to think about it is that we're going to create very little rotation going back, but we're going to have our body rotate towards the target before the club head hits the ground. It's really important that we do rotate before the club hits the ground, otherwise you're more likely to blade your shots. So in this situation here, I grabbed a sand wedge, and when we're using a sand wedge, we want to find a landing spot on the green first. And our landing spot should be about 2 to 3 steps on the green. So making practice swings at that landing spot without turning your body going back, but turning your body going forward, it's really key that you focus on that landing spot versus looking at the target itself. If you look at the flag or the hole, your instincts are going to create such a big swing that's going to make the ball land all the way to the hole. But then we have to have the ball roll out, right? So what we want to do is we want to focus kind of more on where the ball is going to land. And then from there, we're going to figure out, once it's landed, how far is this ball going to roll with my sand wedge. And typically when we do that, as far as we fly it onto the green, it's going to roll about the same distance. A good rule of thumb is to think of it as a 1-to-1 ratio. If I fly the ball 6 steps in the air, then it's going to roll 6 steps. Let's say my target's a little bit further though. Let's say it's more like a 1-to-2. So we've got to make the ball roll more. The option would be to maybe swing this club bigger and faster, but there's an easier solution to that. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and grab a pitching wedge this time. And so because of the difference in loft, if we make the same swing, we land the ball in the same place, we should expect the ball to roll now twice the distance than before. So I'm going to make a practice swing looking at my landing spot. Remember, don't turn your body going back, but turn your body going forward. It's going to come out lower, but hopefully you can see that that ball rolled significantly more. Well, let's say if we were going to go to back one of these back targets now. I can use my pitching wedge and swing bigger, or I can take a very simple approach where I'm going to actually go ahead and use my 9-iron this time, make exactly the same swing, land it in the same place, but now I'm going to see about 3 times the roll, more than what we saw with our pitching wedge. So feet close together, balls in the middle, weights in the front, and then from here, don't turn back, turn the body going forward. It's really key that when you're practicing, you want to make sure that every golf course you go to, you figure out your ratios so you understand how your golf club's going to react based off of the situation you're in. It's not always going to work on a 1-to-1 with your sand wedge. The greens might be faster or slower, so you're going to have to adjust when it comes to that. Okay, so let's talk about pitching now. So pitching is a shot that's beyond chipping in terms of the distance that we are from the green. Typically, you'll start pitching from about 6 steps and beyond from the fringe itself. You don't have to use your pitching wedge when it comes to actually hitting these shots. More often than not, you'll use a 54, a 56, or a sand wedge of some variety. Main difference between chipping and pitching from a technique standpoint is instead of having our hands at the bottom of the grip, we're going to bring our hands more towards our top. That way we can use a little bit more leverage and we can create a little bit more speed in the swing itself. Because the backswing is going a little bit longer than a chip shot, obviously a little bit longer if we're going further onto the green itself, we're going to start to see a little bit of rotation with our body going back, but we don't want to over rotate. That's one big mistake I see a lot of people do when they pitch. And when you over rotate your body going back, you're more likely to hit the ground behind the ball itself. Still going to have our ball in the center of our stance, and we're still going to keep our feet relatively close together, but maybe just a touch wider than what you'd see with a chip shot. So same rules apply. Our instincts are going to lead us to our target. What I mean by that is if I make practice swings looking at the hole, I'm going to fly it right at the hole. So I want to make sure I'm very clear about where I want my landing spot to be and make practice swings based off of that point right there. So looking at the green in front of us here, I can go ahead and make some practice swings. Don't turn too much going back, but turn my body before the club hits the ground. That's really, really important. If we don't turn going through, then we're probably going to blade the ball more often than not. So with my weight slightly on my front foot, don't turn my body going back, your body going forward there. And you can take the same approach as to chipping in the sense that we can use one length of swing depending on what obstacles we have in front of us. But if I have a flag that's a little bit further back, then I can go ahead and use a less lofted club, maybe a pitching wedge, and get a little bit more roll out of it as well. So remember, chipping by true definition is a putting stroke with a lofted club, and we're going to see less loft and more roll when we're hitting chip shots. When it comes to pitching, we're going to hit a little bit more of a higher trajectory shot, and it's going to roll a little bit less. Remember, the distance off the green is really what dictates whether we chip and pitch, and so hopefully that clears some of the confusion you might have. Thanks again for checking out this tip.